Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am gonna pop back in here because I want to put here in the comments. Um, we're gonna put in some questions. So if you have questions about boundaries and different things like that, then we should do it. I did a rookie mistake. Oh my gosh, I accidentally deleted my live, which is so crazy. I was like, no, I clicked the wrong button and deleted it. But I'm gonna go ahead and record. I'm not gonna redo the whole thing over. I'm just gonna hang out with y'all for a little bit. But I'm not gonna do the whole thing over again. But if you have questions about boundaries, I kind of want to just talk about like family and experiences right now. So let's just go ahead and do it if y'all want to. Like, I'm in here, so let's just kind of hang out if you want to. I'm gonna put in here questions on boundaries. Questions about boundaries. Questions about boundaries. And it's funny, like, is this like now a screen share option? That is so crazy. So who wants to join live with me and talk about boundaries? Like, who wants to come on here and talk about some boundaries that, like, who wants to add in? Because I love this. Like, I would totally invite people, like, and be like, hey, let's chat about boundaries. Let's chat about boundaries. Because I feel like it's such an important part about self-care. I know that it's such a broad topic, and I kind of want people to chime in if they have any questions about boundaries and stuff like that. So I'm like, go ahead and chime in. Yo, I deleted the video. So I'm back, and I just figured I would just kind of hang out. I was like, well, let's just hang out, and if we have questions about boundaries, or if you want to join, like, send a request and be like, hey, I want to join. So you want to talk about boundaries? Welcome. So I did the live already, and we already talked about boundaries, and so I was like, let me hop back on here because I deleted it. What's going on, Anna Grace? So now I'm just going to hang out with y'all. So if you want to come on live, or you want to put a question about boundaries that you want me to answer, let's talk. Let's do that. Let's talk about it. So let's talk. Yes, I know. It was fire. So don't worry. I'm going to definitely do it again. All right. Come on, Anna Grace. I know what's so crazy is, I post a replay for y'all. And so I guess let's just talk about it again because I see that this audience is a little bit different. So maybe y'all can get like the replay from 10 to 10:30. This one might be the one that needs to be put out there. So ask some questions, Anna Grace. I know that you got something. What's going on, Miss Bianca Renee? We just did a fire live about boundaries, and I want you guys to ask some questions about them because we talked about family, conflict, how you can set up boundaries that will help you throughout the holidays, or just will help you in your life in general. So I'm gonna just do a quick recap while we're here, and then put a question in the chat so that I can directly answer it about boundaries. Like, how do you set them up? What are they? What do you do when somebody crosses a boundary? So we talked about how it's your safe space, right? Regardless whether it's your home, your mental space, your emotional space, your personal body, whatever it is. Like, let's talk about what that looks like in your own life. And first, you have to understand that you're going to make a decision for yourself and determine what kind of boundaries should you have and should you not have. Okay, because boundaries are not always a negative thing. They're actually self-care. And if you don't set up boundaries, you're going to find yourself pretty frustrated real quick and being bound. So here in the StayFree studio, we got to talk free. For those of you who have checked me out before, like, we have to talk some real talk and talk about what it looks like in whatever area we're talking about tonight, right? So if you're married, put some little hearts or something in the chat. If you are single, put like a 2 in the chat. And if you are, what's going on? And we're talking about boundaries. So I just did the live, and so we're back here. So if you have questions about specific boundaries when it comes to family, when it comes to anything else, yes. And so ask those follow-up questions that you needed to ask. Let's do it. What's going on? All right, so let's talk about boundaries in your own space, right? So y'all are putting it in here. So let's talk about the singles boundaries. If you have boundaries with other people that you're dating, so the person that my ex, when I dated, we dated for 3 years, but before that, like, I dated a few people for I'm like a long-term dater. Oh, here we go. Boom, questions in the question box. Here we go. How do you ask or implement boundaries? Okay. So I'm big. So we were just talking about this. I'm really big on, yes, protect your peace. Okay, so put the question out. I'm gonna pop back in here. Yes, we're gonna do that. All right, we're gonna do that one. Do this one first, and then do the marriage question next. And Grace, put it in the question box so I can follow it up. All right. So how do you ask or implement boundaries? So like ask for those boundaries. I say you have to just state your piece. Okay. Find your voice. You have to find your voice in whatever way you're comfortable in expressing yourself. If you're comfortable expressing yourself via text, via DM, via face-to-face, whether it's a voice text, we have so many ways to communicate now that a miscommunication really is probably in the breakdown of the communication system. That old school thing that they teach you in school about, like, first there's the listener, then there's the message, then there's the channel, and then there's like the receiver, and then it comes back. Like, there's a circle in a way that you communicate a message. And I feel like sometimes we have communication breakdowns in general because there's a breakdown in that cycle. And that's age old, but it is the truth. If you said something and someone heard you a different way, they're hearing through a particular filter, then there's a communication breakdown. But you have to be comfortable with speaking your piece in a way that's comfortable for you. Me, I'm an extrovert. I prefer to talk to somebody. I'm going to call you. I'm going to pick up the phone. We're going to have a face-to-face. And it's not always a negative thing, but when it's time to set up a boundary, for instance, if you say, I do not want this person over my house, do not bring them this year. Me, that's how it's going to come out, okay? I love you. And we don't say I love you, but in my family, that's the boundary we have. We don't say I love you, but don't bring them. Don't say that. It's not I love you, but it's I love you. Can you please not? Can you? Will you? And try to ask in a positive manner, right? So can you bring this? Can you come by yourself? Right? Is it okay if you come on your own? Is it okay if, yeah, so instead of starting with the do not, can it just be us this year? That's a positive way of asking that, right? Can we have seafood this year instead of that dry turkey that so-and-so be cooking? No. Okay, like we got to do fun stuff and like the serious stuff. Ask in a positive manner. If it's okay, so this is the first part. You set it up on your own, right? So we talked about this. When you made the decision to set it up, you shot your shot, right? If your shot is blocked, you have to set up your response. You have to know what you're going to do if they block the shot or if they receive it, right? So if they receive it and it works, then you go with the flow, right? They didn't cross the boundary. Everything is good. They didn't bring so-and-so, or they didn't cook whatever they said they was going to cook. Thank God. Nobody's going to be running to the bathroom all night. We're all good. So they didn't cross the boundary. We're good. Now we don't have to bring it up. So that could be a boundary that you don't cross. Don't start cracking jokes and saying all, because we like to do that. We like to be like, oh, I'm so glad you didn't bring so-and-so. No, you don't have to do all of that. That creates more drama. That's too much. Yes. Play the tape forward. Like, let's just go forward. Okay. So I feel like you have to find your voice in whatever way makes you comfortable. And that's how you set up your boundaries. And you have to have a strategy and a plan for whatever comes after that answer. Now let's talk about the crossing of the boundary. They decided to show up with so-and-so. What did you say you were going to do? Did you say you were going to stop them at the door and say you're not here? Or did you say that person can come in my house, but they can only sit in the corner? Like, what did you say? Okay, you have to tell yourself, what did I say I was going to do? If you told the person that you will not allow them to cross the threshold of your door, which I have had to do before, ma'am, you are not allowed in this home. You stop them at the door, you find your backup, whatever you need to do, and you say, I'm sorry, I love you, sis, bro, uncle, auntie, mama, dada, whoever you are, they're not allowed. I'm sorry, they just can't come into my sacred space, because your self-care and your sanity is the most important thing. And you'll be grateful to yourself that you made that decision instead of allowing them in your house. Exactly. Like, we don't got time for that. Okay. I hope that answered your question. All right. So let me go back to the other one. How do I prioritize myself in marriage? I want to advocate for my happiness while maintaining my partnership. Advocate is a great word. Prioritize is a great word. Sandra, y'all hilarious. Yes, that it's just, you just don't. Okay. So your house is sacred, and Grace, right? But so is your mental and your emotional space. Okay. So if you prioritize yourself, self-care, boundaries are included in self-care. If you say, babe, we cannot, this, that, and the third, whatever it may be, it can't always be one-sided in any relationship, friendships, family members, marriage. A little bit about my marriage. I was married for 9 years. I was with the person for 12 years. We dated for 3.5 years. Like, we were together for a long time. And the last 2 years, or the last year and a half or so of our marriage, we were separated or estranged. So I'm familiar with every phase of what that looks like. And so it's really important for you, yes, to be an individual first. And sometimes in the midst of when you're married, you know how that goes. You end up losing yourself when you continue to give and give and give and give and give. So my youth pastor years ago when I was a teenager talked about how emotional boundaries are something that's set up. And it was an illustration that stuck with me. It's like a heart, right? And I have my notebook here so I can like kind of give it to you. But basically, it's like you have this heart, right? And this particular person, like if you have this, each person that you date, right? Each person that you sleep with or whatever it is, you done gave a little part away. Gave a little part away. Oh, 2 parts away. Keep going. And that's how it goes in marriage too, in your relationship. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do this again, but here I go again giving in. Here I go again giving in. This paper's getting smaller. Oh my gosh, that really hurt me that time. It's going to keep going to the point where, boo, you ain't got nothing left. This is what you looking like on the inside, mentally and emotionally, because you didn't gave everything away and you didn't replenish nothing. So we got to be facts with ourselves and be like, at what point, boundaries in marriage are extremely important. If you said that this is not what we're going to do and that person continues to disrespect you, that's a serious problem because y'all are supposed to be on the same page really at all times. And I'm not saying that that's the case, but when you're married, this is a family unit that you're supposed to have as a foundation for each other. You are now the family. You have taken on his last name, sis. So it's like, this is our family. This is what we're doing. This is a partnership where it's a level playing field. We give and we take and we work together until it works, right? We work until it works. But if one person just refuses to work, now we go back to, I said, when this happens again, what's going to be your consequence? And it's not, oh, go sleep on the couch or whatever the case may be. That's petty. What is the actual consequence? Like, what are you going to do? Are we not engaging in this conversation any longer? You have to have a realistic one. Do we need space? Because just because we said forever doesn't mean that I can go have my own space, can't have my own space. Forever doesn't mean I can't live with you anymore or whatever. Like, oh, absolutely. Oh, sis, that's a whole nother live. I Kiss Dating Goodbye is trash. And you see, I'm not even going to go there tonight. See, don't bring that out of me. See, we wasn't going there tonight. But I Kiss Dating Goodbye is trash. Boy kiss, all that. Trash. Take it out the door, throw it, burn it, whatever you got to do. Kiss it goodbye. I Kiss Dating goodbye. Because the whole philosophy of dating is trash. And so the book that she's referring to is like a book that's heavy in evangelical Christian circles that a lot of churches used to push, but years down the line, the man who wrote the book divorced his own wife. They not even together no more. And the church that they were a part of covered up a whole scandal with child molestation. Like, people have their own issues, and I know that people wave a mantle, and it's like, you got to be careful about things that you say about people. But to be honest with you, like on some real stuff, be careful about what I always tell people, be careful about what you put on wax and what you put down in print. And then as the reader and as the listener, you have to be careful about letting people change their mind. So there's no condemnation to Joshua Harris. He made the choice he wanted to make. Maybe he was in a trash of a marriage and he was like, you know what, this ain't for me no more, I'm out. Okay, he had the right to make that decision. And he has the right 40 years later after that book to make a decision that he wants to make. And so I feel like those decisions in our own personal life, we have to set up the boundary, right? Make a decision. Keep the decision and then follow through with the consequence. And then guess what? If you don't follow through with that consequence, you have to be okay with the fact that you didn't follow through with that. Don't beat yourself up about it, but you have to be okay with it. Be like, you know what? That was me. You know what, sis? We didn't set up that boundary. Okay, bro. I know that's what we said we was going to do. We didn't do it. So that's what that is. So yeah, I'm going to go to the next one because that's going to be a rabbit hole. You're going to, she about to suck me in. What was the other one? Oh yeah. Healthy versus unhealthy boundaries. So, healthy boundaries, things that always, I feel like anything that, the same way we talk about mental health and a pervasive behavior that impacts the behavior of a person, that impacts your actual routines, right? So your daily routine, right? Getting up, morning routine, you get up, brush your teeth, wash your face, whether you're a shower person or not, work out, whatever you do in the morning. You have peace in the morning, meditate, pray, whatever you do in the morning. Whatever that is. if now you're in a predicament where on a negative side, you can no longer do the things that you used to enjoy because this particular thing is happening or behavior is now changing your behavior, that's something that has to be evaluated. So I would say with a healthy boundary is, let's use the house for example. I do not allow certain things in my home, right? If you say this person cannot be in my home, or I don't bring these things in my home, it brings bad energy, like I just don't do it, then don't do it. I feel like that's a healthy boundary. Why? Because number one, your space is the most important thing. Your body is something you have control over. I feel like something that belongs to you is something that you can talk about when it comes to health, right? So no one can tell you what to do with your mind and your thoughts and your body. We can give you advice, we can kind of share some things with you, but I can't tell you what to do with your body. You live in it. You can tell you what to do with it, and you can tell other people what to do with it. I was just talking about this the other day. I have a child. Nobody else can make decisions for that child but me and his father. If anybody else got stuff to say about that child, I mean, we got stuff to say about all kinds of kids, how people raise their kids, all that kind of stuff on social media, but ain't nobody going to tell me what I'm going to do with mine. That's for sure. Because I've been crossed recently about that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I had to, even in myself, say a healthy boundary is, as a mother, this particular thing is going on and I have to say no to it. As nice as I want to be, as calm as I want to be, whatever it is, I have to now say no. And I'm like, dag, do I want to be that person? Is it really that deep? I had to set up a healthy boundary even though it was uncomfortable, because I had to check myself and look at myself and say, hold up, this one mine. I'm responsible for him. So I don't know what everybody else do with their kids, but in my house, for my body, for my, my home, whatever it is, whatever you have reign over and control of is what you're allowed to make a boundary for. Now, when you create that boundary, how does it affect other people? So now let's talk about the unhealthy version of a boundary. So say you're doing something even with in a relationship, right? So you're dating somebody or whatever it may be, and you're like, hey, we just don't, I don't know. It's been so long since I'm about to date again. I'm like, okay, what do you do like when you date or whatever? Okay, say we don't go certain places together, or say we drive separate, whatever y'all do. I don't know. Basically, we drive separate, or so-and-so pays this time, so-and-so pay next time. I don't know, just some old school stuff. And that boundary like constantly is crossed, constantly being crossed, and then now you kind of like blow up because the boundary continues to be crossed, or like they say something that continuously is disrespectful and you're like, okay, they were disrespectful again, like, okay, it happened again. Now you're like, I have a boundary where we always do this together, but every single time we do it, she does that, and every single time we do it, he does that. So now you got a boundary where you're like, we always do this. It's something that we always can do, but the consequence is always the same. Does that make sense? And I hate asking that question because I feel like I clarified, but I feel like I'm being vague. So for instance, there are certain things, I'm trying to pull a real life example. I'm trying to really remember something where I was like, okay, in my marriage, this is something we did not do. And I was like, we can't do that again. Making plans for my birthday. That was something that was just hell, like living hell. We could not make plans for my birthday because it always ended up in an argument for all kinds of reasons. So I created a boundary and I said, guess what we're not going to do? We're not going to make boundaries. We're not going to make plans for my birthday, because you know what happens? It ends up in an argument and it ends up a living hell. So you know what we're going to do? Because I like to celebrate my birthday, we're not going to make plans together. I'm going to make my own plans. You can choose to be a part of them or not. That's how that's going to go. That was the plan, right? So I had to think about that. I had to think about a real life boundary because I felt like that was being vague. An unhealthy boundary in that situation would have been like, you as my husband can never celebrate my birthday for me forever. That makes no sense. It's unrealistic. Anything that's unrealistic to your daily lifestyle is an unhealthy boundary. A realistic boundary is saying we can never celebrate in this way until these things happen. Now, healthy boundary is set up. We can celebrate, boo, when I get home, when this happens, whatever. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to plan together, because this ends in a real bad argument. So what we're not going to do is plan this way. So I feel like that's a healthy boundary, something that's realistic, something that's attainable, something that doesn't hurt other people. So it would be unrealistic for me to say, oh, my child can never interact with other children ever again because of COVID. That makes no sense. Set up a boundary that makes sense for your children, for your family. So I hope that was helpful. Any other questions? Oh wait, I think I saw some other ones up here. Any other questions? Let's go for it. Any other things about boundaries? We're just kicking it in here. It's okay. Sexy red cutie, it's okay that you missed the live. I'm gonna do a video for everybody. I'm gonna post it so that we do have something to replay because it was fire. We definitely need to do that. So I just want to encourage people and just say, like, yo, boundaries are super important for your own self-care and for your own health, because yo, you're in control of you. You're in control of your own mind, your own heart, your own emotions, and you have to protect it at all costs, because you have to be with you for the rest of your life. So it's like, if you don't take care of yourself, then who's going to take care of you? Nobody. Don't wait for nobody to come save you and take care of you. It's just you. Sometimes I tell myself, I'm like, it's just us, boo. It's just us. We just got to take care of ourselves. What's going on, TJ? We talking to, I lost my live earlier, so I'm doing Q&A. So you got any questions about boundaries, just put them up. We're talking about relationships, family boundaries, boundaries with our kids, our significant others, partners, as singles, married folk. We're talking about boundaries. So go ahead and put something that, throw a question in there, because I'm sure you got some good stuff. Hey, if anybody wants to come live with me, y'all can do that too. I'm cool with it. Like, y'all want to jump in? Who wants to jump in? Don't make me start sending out requests. We're just hanging out. Let's see. Miss Bianca Renee, meet Zandre Music. Miss Zandre Music, meet Theo. Y'all know each other. Who else is in here? Is Anna Grace still here? Just meet each other. You guys are awesome. I definitely know all of y'all, and y'all are so dope. All of y'all brands are dope. Everything that y'all post is like super dope. Some of the other people that were up here earlier, like, y'all are so dope. So I thank you so much for the support. So what's going on? TT, we were just introducing other people. Do you have a question about boundaries? Let's talk about boundaries, because my live from earlier got lost, so I gotta re-record everything and put it up for y'all on IGTV. I know you always have good questions about boundaries. This is in behavioral health and all kinds of stuff. And TT is one of those people that was with me when I had to create a lot of boundaries in my personal life. And I love her dearly. She's a good friend of mine. So I'm like, I had to create so many boundaries. And she was actually, so we talked about accountability on the live earlier, okay? And so when you create a boundary and you said you're going to stick with something and you're not going to have that boundary crossed, and you're going to accept the consequence that comes with the boundary being crossed, right? Say somebody says something out of pocket and you're like, okay, what I said I was going to do is I'm going to take a 5-minute break and then I'll come back. Or I said I was going to leave, remove myself from the situation, or I'll confront the person, right? You got to have somebody that's going to check you and that's going to hold you accountable with your decisions when it comes to those boundaries being crossed, right? So whether it's your significant other or that person, and you say, okay, well, you said that if so-and-so pops off at the dinner table, you said that you were just going to walk away and you were going to leave. Now, if you start going off, that person needs to be there to be like, excuse me, you said you were ready to leave when that person says that, so we got to go now. When giving your spouse some space, how long should we give them space? As long as they've set the realistic boundary. So what we just talked about was a healthy versus an unhealthy boundary, okay? So a healthy boundary, and then I'm going to pop the other one in here because we have another question in here too. A healthy boundary when it comes to spouses, because I was married for 9 years and I dated for 3.5 prior to that. The hardest boundary I had to set. Ooh, y'all going to get into it tonight. Oh, this is going to be the good stuff. Okay, 3 in a row. Okay, so I'm going to do TJ's first. Then I got one in the chat from Miss Bianca, and then Zandre. All right. So expressing the boundary, however you're the guy, so I'm going to say your wife. However your spouse presented the boundary, or your wife presented the boundary, if they presented a realistic boundary that you guys have mentioned before, honor the boundary. Now, a boundary also, I create goals for a living, so I have to say, especially with mental health goals, you have to make sure that the goal is attainable, right? If I create a boundary that disrupts the house, that disrupts our sacred space, our mind, our emotions, our mental health, it's a disruption. We need to reassess why we created the boundary in the first place and figure out, is this a way that we can create a boundary that's healthy, right? So if it's a space that she's like, this is my space, her she shed, whatever you want to call it, like her guys have a man cave. If I need space from conversing about a financial issue, right? Let's use that as an example because it's real vague, but finances is real big, sex is a big topic, family is a big topic, right? When it comes to marriage. So when you're having a conversation, the convo would be, hey, let's have a sit down. I don't know about other spouses here, but I feel like it's always good for spouses to have check-ins. Like, y'all got to sit down and y'all got to have those heart-to-hearts, whether it's over dinner, whether it's pillow talk. Y'all got to have real heart-to-hearts and some serious talks, because you can't just run yourself ragged and then go to bed at night, or just like have sex and go to bed. Like, that's just not how that's going to work. You have to be like, hey, how are you? Like, how are you doing? What went on today? How is your head? How's your heart today? Now, you got to ask them real serious questions, because if you don't, you're not going to get to the root of the problem. So if sis is like, yo, I need space, you got to find out why. And find out, if you already know why, you know why she needs a space. And then ask, hey, can we make it measurable? Can we say 2 weeks? Whatever kind of space you need, can we get a break from having this conversation? And she's like, I don't want to ever talk about this again. Be like, well, we can't not talk about it again, but how can we put a deadline on it, right? That is healthy communication. So we talked about communication breakdown and how you go in a circle. It has to be the listener presents it in a way that's respectful and loving, and the speaker presents in a way that's respectful and loving, and the listener also has to receive in the same way. Especially in marriage, you have to confront the conversation in love. She's setting up this boundary because she loves herself. Because I love her, I'm going to allow her this boundary. And it's not really allow. I know that's a bad word to use because we don't want to talk about control, blah, blah. But it is an allowance when it comes to a partnership. Like, I'm going to give. Give is a better word, right? So I'm going to give her that space, whatever she said, whatever that space she said she needed. But let's communicate about what it looks like. Does it look like 2 weeks? Does it look like 3 months? What does it look like? And we have to be comfortable with whatever consequence comes with what comes out of that person's mouth. If we say it's going to be 2 weeks and then she decides to change her mind, because we said we have to give that space too, because sometimes people are not ready to have conversations. They're not ready to deal with trauma. They're not ready to have hard topic conversations. But we have to keep the lines of communication open without holding offense with each other. Even though you may be pissed off and irritated, we can't do that, because y'all got to live together. You got to build a family. So it's not about that. Let's just make it work. Let's figure out how we're going to have it work. What's going on, Miss Jspirations Live? We're talking about boundaries and we're going through questions. So I hope that helps. Open communication is really the main thing. All right. I'm going to move on because we got other questions. When did you notice you needed to start setting boundaries for yourself? When I was running myself ragged. Oh my goodness. When I was depleted. So the example I gave about ripping the paper earlier, when I found that I had nothing left to give. I had nothing left. Oh my gosh, my self-care was trash. I could not, no, my self-care was trash. I was not buying new clothes. I wasn't buying stuff for different seasons. And y'all gonna be like, wait, sis, what? Like, no, true self-neglect, because y'all know that's what if you haven't heard self-neglect, you heard it here on Joy Stays Free, because that's what I help people with. Self-neglect is real, okay? And self-neglect, especially in caregivers, people who are very caring and very giving, especially, and in my situation, a codependent / abusive situation, whether it's emotional, physical, mental, whatever that looks like, even if it's spiritual. What's going on? Where's Taylor? We're just doing questions and just hanging out and talking about boundaries. So I'm like, you have to understand, like, I needed to set up that boundary for myself because I was losing myself. I did not recognize who I was. I was like, I'm tired all the time. I look a hot freaking mess in the mirror every morning. I have nothing. I have nothing for nobody, not even me. And so when I recognized that, I was like, this is a boundary I have to set for myself. And so now I'm going to go into the next question, because what's the hardest question? What's the hardest one you have to set for yourself? Can y'all still hear me? Because it looked like it tried to. Okay. See, comment failed to post. Can y'all still hear me? Put something in the chat if you can still hear me. It was telling me I need to plug my phone in. I need to grab the charger. But yeah, like, it's when I tell you the hardest boundary I had to set for myself, like, I noticed I needed to do that because people were stressing me out. Like, they were just stressing me out. Everything people would do would, like, bother me. And I'm a people person. I'm very gracious with people. Like, I just am. I love people. I love how people operate. And I love the people who are even my sandpaper people. The people that irk me the most. Like, I love them. Like, I absolutely do. Right? So, I noticed that I needed to do that because I was a hot mess. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I needed to reconnect with God. I needed to reconnect with myself. And I needed to do things that reminded me how to love myself again. So I'm gonna go to the other one. It said tell us the hardest boundary you had to set in place, and also have you ever crossed someone's boundary? If so, why? Woohoo! I don't know if y'all ready for that one. That's a deep one. Crossing boundaries. Let's see. That's a loaded question. Okay, so boundary that I had to set, saying that the hardest boundary I ever had to set was saying to my ex-husband, if you do not take care of yourself, you gotta leave. That's it. That's the hardest boundary I ever had to set. If you do not take care of yourself, this right here this ain't gonna work, because I love you and this ain't gonna work. Okay, so for those who don't know my story, let's get into the story, because Andre wants to he bringing the oh yeah heaviness of crossing boundaries. What's going on, Stephanie? We just talked throwing in questions about boundaries. People think in marriage, right? So for those who are single in here, yeah, like for those of you who are in here who are married and who are not married, let's talk about my situation real quick, because I want people to be very clear. I think marriage is sacred. I love marriage. I love married people. I love all married. Like, I love people who get married. I love. I think that's dope, right? When I set out on this journey, like when we're young and we start talking about like, hey, like the boyfriends that I had, you trying to be married? You want to have kids? If not, get out of my face and stop wasting my time. Get off my sidekick. That's how old I am. So I'm like, okay, don't come in my space, DMing me, Black Planet, all that kind of good stuff. For those of you who are about in your early 30s, for senior millennials, okay? Like, don't play with me. I had no time to play. 16, 17, 18, it don't matter. I had no time to play. I was like, I want to be married. So if you're going to be here wasting my time, please step away, okay? I don't have time for that. So when I would date, I was that girl who dated for a long time. Like, we together. And then, oh, yes, yes, mi gente, who's in here? What's up? I'm a senior millennial, yes. So, like, the guys I dated knew that. And when we broke it off, it was because there were some red flags, right? So the guy I was dating prior to my ex-husband, we dated for over a year, and I broke it off because I was like, this is not going to be a spiritual leadership situation. All my friends thought I was crazy because, for face value, he had money. We used to go on trips. He used to live in Long Island. I mean, I was in college. He would like put me on a train back and forth. It was like the life. Like, he was working for, like a really big phone company when basically the internet was blowing up, right? Making crazy money, having a good time, like we had fun. Like, we had a lot of fun. And we got to get into the good stuff because y'all are a good group, so I'm going to give y'all the good stuff. I was celibate before I got married. I was not having sex with nobody. I was like, we are not, it's about me and Jesus, and I don't play them games, okay? Because I'm saving myself for marriage, and we are not going to play that game. So whoever I was dating, we were not having sex. So it was like, hey, we can hang, we can have a good time. We're going to build emotionally. We're going to build mentally, spiritually. That's what we're going to do. You're going to pray for me. I'm going to pray for you. We're going to build like that. Everything was in place except for the spiritual piece with that relationship. And we dated for so long, and there was a spiritual piece there, but it was not enough to lead me. It was not enough to build a family. It was not enough to build an empire. It was not enough to build what I knew was in me at the time to build, right? And I was like, I know what kind of woman I am, and I'm not a strong woman in the sense that I'm about to run over and belittle anybody's man. But what I am is I know who I am. I know who I am in Christ, and I know that I have a voice, and I don't need to be in a relationship that's going to stifle my voice, because God gave me this voice, and I will be using it. So if I see a problem, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it respectfully. I'm going to say it lovingly, but I am going to speak my piece. So if we're going to be there, we have to just, oh yeah, that's a whole nother situation with boundaries. Like, no, we don't do that. And that was like, oh gosh, y'all about to get all the good stuff. With my ex, that was during our dating situation, that was one of the very first boundaries that was like, crossed, like almost crossed. And I was like, is that really what I want? Nah. And kind of like shuffled it under the rug. Watch out for boundary pushers. Boundary pushers are very interesting people. People who see the boundary pushed and they like, there's a boundary. Let's see what we can do with that. And they push it. Please step away from boundary pushers. I have to go back and think about what I would like to say about that. But I want to interject that one right there. But yeah, that was a hard boundary. Like, that was something that was hard. We did have that boundary. The guy I dated before my ex. And so I'm trying to think about what I was going to say about that. Oh, I broke it off with him, and all my friends thought I was crazy. It was like my senior year in college, and they were like, "You're an idiot. Like, he's going to take care of you. He's crazy in love with you. You're an idiot." But I had the hardest conversation I ever had to have with him, and was like, "You cannot spiritually lead me. You don't know God like you think you do. I'm sorry, you don't." And he knew it was true. That's why we're not together. That's why we didn't end up together. He was like, "You're right. I wish I could be better this way, but I'm not." And I was like, you know what? And because of that, I don't have time to waste. I don't. I just don't. I know, you know where you are. I know where you are. Just because your dad's a pastor, just because y'all churchy, that's cute. But do you know him? Do you know the God that I serve? And that's another boundary. Like, that's some real stuff. If your spiritual walk is a certain way, and that people don't like to talk about that when we talk about dating. We talk about communication, we talk about sex, we talk about chemistry, we talk about all this other good stuff, purpose and building a life together. But I'm gonna tell you something right now. If that spiritual game is off, that whole thing gonna fall apart. I'm gonna tell you that right now. So I had to just be like, yo, if your spiritual game is not on, then this is not gonna work out. So that's why we ended that. And I feel like that's one of the hardest things that I had to do. Was it's that hard thing when you really love somebody and y'all love each other, but y'all know that this ain't gonna work out. Y'all like, you know what? I know, and I'm glad that we made that decision, because he was honest enough to be like, I can't be that for you. And was honest enough to be like, you know what? I know that that's why you made that decision for us. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So that's what it was. Yeah, you better get your spiritual game up. I'm gonna tell you right now that if you get your spiritual game up, this is game for any dude that's on here. If your spiritual game is up, yo, everything else with the females is gonna be straight. I'll tell you that right now. The part 2. So have I crossed boundaries? I have crossed boundaries before. I have found that I'm spiritually responsible for leading myself spiritually, and not my husband or anybody else. Absolutely, you are responsible for leading yourself spiritually. But let me tell you what. I'm gonna tell you what my religion says. If you're a Christian, right, and you believe in the Judeo-Christian God of the Bible, and you believe that Jesus is the Savior, and that if you confess and believe in your heart that God has raised Jesus from the dead, you will be saved. If that's the Jesus you believe in, that right there, that God holds the man responsible for your spiritual leadership as a female. Period. He's responsible. Y'all are on an equal playing field, but that dude is responsible for that whole house. Because, like a business, and people don't want to talk about this, but I'm going to give y'all all the game tonight. Like, you're sitting around, like, we talk about having an even playing field, but just like any good business, there has to be a leader. So, y'all can be like, there is no such thing as a CEO and a CEO too. Like, oxygen. Like, no. It's CEO, owner and founder, maybe co-founders, but everybody has a role to play. And everybody has to stay in their position and play their role. So some person, even when you have a board, the board can't be split 50-50. It has to be some sort of thing in the bylaws that will separate the conversation. It's like that even in our in the government. You have to have a deciding factor, even if it's a 1%. So who holds the 1% in your relationship? And based on the Bible, the man holds that 1%, because that's his role. Not because he's a man, but that's the role that God gave him. If God gave it to the women, it would be ours. That's just how it works. So if you believe that, then you believe it. If you don't, and y'all just want to keep going back and forth and being 50-50 and going in circles all the time, then feel free to do that. But if it's you, then it's you. The point is, I believe that the male holds that role, and I believe the Creator is going to hold men responsible for the collateral damage that they left behind. And even though it is your responsibility to be spiritually sound, you have a responsibility to hold him spiritually responsible for everybody else too. So everybody's like, oh, as a believer, we can't judge each other. Yes, the heck we can. It says it in the Bible. Because I'm a believer and you're a believer and we're married, I can hold you accountable for all the trash that you do. And I can call you to the carpet for it, and I can check you and be like, nope. That's not what that says in the Bible. And because you're spiritually responsible for yourself and you know God well, you can call God to the carpet. I mean, you can call your husband to the carpet and talk to God about him. And that's the beauty of a strong woman. That's the beauty of a strong, spiritually sound woman. Because the issue I have with women's ministries is that we raising flimsy women. Like, spiritual thoughts out here. Like, y'all just, everybody is like, yeah, like, judge righteously. Like, everybody's out here like, you want to be, like, you got a bunch of women that's like a little bit of new age, a little bit of yoga this, a little bit of meditation that, a little bit of God here, a little bit of Allah there. And then dudes is getting married to these girls that's got their hearts all over the place. My charger, don't let this thing in. I ain't playing with y'all. Let me grab my charger, because it's good. But no, like, this is serious. Like, you cannot let things, like, spiritually end. That's, like, not how that's going to work. All right, we're going to have to pop back on, because isn't that a riot? Like, that you always have chargers, like, nearby until you actually need one? Like, that's crazy. Y'all want to hang out? Because I know I'm breaking all the rules. Don't tell this is Nikki, like, for real. Don't tell her none of this, okay? Because she going to come after me. I know what I'm supposed to do in the live. Y'all want to wait? Or y'all want me to end it? Tell me what I should do. What are my my marketing gurus? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to end and invite people back? Or am I supposed to, like, continue? Hey, baby. Commercial break. Dondra, keep it going. I'm actually going to grab it because I think it would be kind of dumb to, like, end it and then wait for everybody to come back. I'm not going to do that. I'll be right back. Okay. Because I was about to say, I'm not doing that. Y'all can still hear me okay? Let me see. We're not even going to do that. Like, all right. I know. I got to have pillows in this chair. This is like my old... So this chair has a very special story, which I'll share later. But this is... Y'all still hear me? Cool. This chair has a special... It's like... It's special to me. I nursed my baby in this chair. This is my rocking chair for my little guy. Yo, this is real crazy. This is how I know this is good, because I'm always plugged up and I always have all my stuff here. And now all of a sudden, I have like 3 blocks, y'all. And my block is like not here. All right. So we were talking about crossing boundaries. Who wants to go first about boundary crossers? Let me see what y'all said. He said, "Am I talk?" Okay, so we were talking about boundaries and like crossing boundaries and relationships. So somebody else put another question in there. What else was I supposed to say? What about crossing boundaries and about boundary crossers? Tough part. Married for 10 years, but at the end of the day, you can take your spouse. you can take your spouse to heaven. Everyone is responsible for their self. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. She's like in popcorn. Yeah, let's go. So, yeah, we were talking about dating and relationships and those different things. And so, it's important to note that, like, you have to. What's going on, Lady Ty? You have to make those decisions. You have to make them for yourself, and you have to create those boundaries for yourself, because if you don't, like, it's going to be a trip. It's going to be a trip if you don't. Like, you have to. You have to. All right, boom. There we go. Y'all can come in nice and close and kind of hang out with me. Right? We good? All right. Yeah, everybody's responsible for their own spiritual journey. Like, you really are. But I truly believe, like, okay, this is where I was going with that combo. Like, I truly believe, like, you have to, with your own spiritual journey, women who are not spiritually strong cannot hold nobody down. Like, straight up, you just can't. And that's no shade to anybody. It's really not. Like, you just cannot, though. Because your role, just like we talked about men's roles, your role is to hold him down in that responsibility. So if you cannot get on your face and pray and intercede on his behalf if you cannot pray over his goals and dreams and visions so that things behind the scenes happen the way they should, and even though you have you could be called to a particular like leadership role, right, as a woman, but in this particular relationship, your role is that not just the admin role, but you also have the role of really COO. You are the chief operating officer in this relationship. So you need to make sure that this thing runs like a freaking well-oiled machine, because you are packed and jam-packed with tools, right? And it does work both ways. But to be honest, like, you're an arsenal. So even if you're looking for a wife, you need to look for an arsenal. Somebody need to put that in the chat. That's kind of good. Look for an arsenal, because you got to have the tools. If you're going to go out there and you're going to perform, you need tools. So she's the person, she's your partner. She should have your back. She's that person that covers your back. Like, she's the lookout. She's the sniper. That's why women have so much in them. They're ready to birth and produce all these different things because they can. Right? And I don't know if you guys know Dr. Miles Monroe, but he put it really well, like in a clip that I heard a few months ago. He was like, women produce. The man is the seed, and women produce. You basically, there's a clip that's going around like, whatever you give a woman, she multiplies it, because that's how we were created. That's my role. I'm good with that. Give me a seed, I carry a baby. Can y'all still hear me? Nah, that's that good knowledge, yo. Like, I love ET. Like, I always get stuff there. Are y'all still here? Because it was like saying reconnecting. I don't know what's going on there. This is how it go when it's like getting real good. Stuff be trying to like prevent it, but let's just say nothing's gonna prevent this message from getting out, because we all need each other. Like, we all need. Well, that's good, Zandre. I can tell my story. We want to talk about boundaries in my story. Have I crossed boundaries before? I kind of wanted to go back to that. I feel like everybody crosses boundaries at times. Like, I feel like we all cross boundaries we shouldn't cross at all, right? Yeah, yo. Okay, we back. So, any other questions? We're just kind of hanging out here. This is fun. I appreciate y'all. You guys are super supportive. Shout out to the bricklayers. Shout out to the bricklayers group. Like, we just hanging out. Like, dope. Stephanie, talk to us. Give us some questions. So Zandre's like, have y'all heard my story? I'm still really nailing down, because you know what's crazy? You know how there's so many different parts of your story? You're really trying to nail down the high points and the low points. But I mean, I'll share part of my story with you guys. I'm really here. I'll share the part that we're seeing now and some of it before. But like, yo, I talk about staying free because I've been bound before. Like, I've been in a lot of different stuff. Like, right? Like, okay, see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining. I'm super excited that you're here. But yeah, like, I used to be bound. Like, I used to be in an emotionally abusive relationship, which, you know, people didn't agree with me. They didn't believe me. They didn't understand what was going on. I kept trying to tell people. I did reach out to people for help. I tried to explain what was going on. Nobody believed me. I went to a spiritually abusive church prior to my marriage, and nobody would probably, there are people that would believe it now, but at the time, no one would have believed that the church was spiritually abusive. They thought that, you know, it was just a simple disagreement, but the church was abusive. I encountered abuse at my job at one point, not the job that I'm at now, but I used to do the same position in a different city. I used to live in Philadelphia. In the same position that I had, it was still an issue there. And I only recently, during my separation, came to the understanding that I had been codependent for like the past 10 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I this person? And that's a realization that when you come to that, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm such a caregiver. People take advantage of that. And not only do they take advantage of it, but they take your kindness for weakness. And then it begins to make you weak when you allow them to do that. So that's basically my story. And I found that, you know, there was freedom in my faith. There was freedom in the relationship that I had with God. I was raised in a Christian family. My father is a pastor. And my parents, though, are divorced. And so I have a great relationship with my father now. And so that's part of my story. Part of my story is that, you know, my parents got divorced when I was 8, but I was a daddy's girl. But I also have other siblings who didn't get the same experience or don't have the same experience with my father, I got to see every single angle because my dad has been married multiple times. So I saw what it was like when he was running the church. I saw what it was like when he was with my mom. I saw who he was now, with my siblings. I have a big blended family. I'm the second oldest of 7. And so we have a big blended family, and we're all over. Like, most of us are grown, but we have a few younger ones that are about to leave the nest now. I got teenage siblings. So just like, there's a lot of different pieces to my story, but like, I'm such I care so much about people. I know that's how I'm wired. Like, I care about people's souls. I care about people's hearts. I care about, seeing people win. Like, anybody will tell you, like, I'm your cheerleader. Like, I'm going to cheer you on because I believe anybody can do anything to a fault. Like, if you said you about to start the business, I'm about to be there like, yes, you about to start it. Like, I'm excited for you. Like, yes, you can do that. You're in your relationship, I'm cheering you on. Yes, be that person in your relationship. Like, I'm excited for you. Whatever you set your mind to do, I believe anybody can do anything. And it's almost to a fault, to the point where I have to set up boundaries for myself to be like, sis, they showed you who they are. Believe them. Like, they're not going to do it. They said they were going to do it, but they're not. Like, don't keep giving them chance after chance. Like, people are going to show you who they are. And when they do, you better believe them. When I tell you that quote from Maya Angelou hit me in a whole nother way in the past few years, the only predictor of human behavior moving forward is past human behavior. Like, stop playing. So, yes, people can change. And yes, you need to be open to people changing. And that is very true, and people can do that, because I know even in my own self, I have changed. Like, people, depending on when you've met me, and everybody can agree with this, right? Like, depending on when somebody met you, they'll be like, oh yeah, I met you like back in the day, you used to do that. And you could be a completely different person, and most likely you are, and hopefully you're a better person than you were when they met you if it was a negative encounter, right? But which one? I'm just like, you definitely can't. Like, you are a different person. Like, you're a different person than when people met you. Like, you have to give people grace. Give people some space to encounter you. Like, give people space to do that. Oh, yeah. So Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. That's the quote. When people show you who they are, believe them. And so I was like, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, that's cool. I believe that's who you say you are. But because I'm a hopeless optimist, when people would show me who they are, I'm like, they can be better. But that can be fixed. That's not that bad. Like, because I really believe that about people. Like, I believe that they can be better and do better because I understand human behavior change, right? I also was a psych major and a speech comm minor. So, like, I understand how people communicate. I understand how people speak. Like, I used to work in behavioral health. I used to work in the schools. Like, I worked a lot with people. And because I work with people, I understand that people can and will change over time if you put the work in. But that's the caveat. You got to do the work. And when I find that you're not doing the work, you need to believe that there needs to be a consequence or something that comes with that person not doing the work. So even around boundaries, it has to be understood. If that person is not doing the work, and you know that they're not doing the work, then it's time for you to move forward with the decision and the consequence you said you were going to execute. And that's why I go to what I said earlier. It is very difficult. It was very difficult for me to make that decision in the past few years because it was not a decision I wanted to make. I didn't want to make that decision. I didn't want to say, just throwing the towel to all the work I put in, over 10 years of work. Nobody wants to do that. 10 years of work with somebody? No, you don't want to throw that away. Like, you put 12 years of blood, sweat, tears into a relationship, and you mean to tell me you're just going to give it away? Like, toss it? Like, no, I wasn't trying to give that up. But to be honest, past behavior showed me, this person, my ex, you're not going to change. I'm not saying you can't change. I'm not saying that God can't redeem your life. But what I am saying is, this is what you said sorry for. You did it again. You crossed another boundary. And yet you did it again. You crossed another boundary. And we're not thriving. We were homeless at one point. We kept getting kicked out of apartments. I moved almost every year. My friends were kind of confused because they was like, girl, you keep living different places. I'm like, yes, because I'm trying to be a good wife. I'm trying to follow. I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do, what I feel like God is calling me to do, but it's to a fault. Instead of drawing the line in the sand and saying, not only are you not providing for us, but we're literally like going from place to place. We're nomads. We can't be settled anywhere, and it's because of instability. And I had to make a decision for myself and say, I'm not going to tolerate this any longer, especially when my child came on the scene. That's when I had to recognize there's another life that I'm responsible for. So when we talk about spiritual accountability, there's a spiritual life that I'm also accountable for who cannot defend itself at this point. So who's going to defend that child? Who's going to protect this child? And one of us got to do it. If you ain't going to do it, I'm going to do it. Somebody got to do it. So me and this baby not going to be out on the street, and CPS is not going to be knocking on my door. I'm going to tell you that right now, because that's the field I work in. So I'm like, I know what this is going to end up as. I'm not having my child getting taken away just because people can't provide. I can't do that. That's why I work now. Shout out to the 9-to-5 millionaire Jamal King. Like, that's how I feel. Like, yo, I got to work, but I also got to build this brand. I got to do what I got to do because I know what's in me. So that's part of my story. I meant to check this. I'm sorry, that was 7 minutes ago, Stephanie. What way did you cross your boundaries, and what did you learn? Oh my goodness. With family, I continue to let people treat me any kind of way. That's just family. That's with my relationship with my ex. It's the same thing. I continue, like, and so when I say that, like, okay, so I have a boundary. I'm like, okay, when this happens, or I'm trying to, because I have two completely different scenarios. So I use family as an example because that's pretty relevant. When they would cross the boundary and say something about my husband, or when there was some sort of like disagreement between my husband and the family right at the time, then I would be like, okay, I'm going to, either we're going to leave, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, whatever that would be. I would be like, okay, I'm not going to say this, or I'm not going to engage in this argument, or whatever it is, and I would do it. Like, I'd be like, crap, I said that out loud. Crossing boundaries. I have definitely crossed boundaries that I'm not quite ready to share yet on this live because there's a setup, there's an alley-oop for it, and so that's gonna come in February. So y'all just gotta keep listening. But there's a boundary that I crossed that I'm not willing to share yet because we're not there yet. We got to talk about a few different things before we set that up. But I definitely crossed that boundary, and it wasn't an appropriate boundary. It was like, yo, you're bugging right now. You're self-neglecting, and because you're making choices that are bad for yourself, now you're damaging yourself. That's what you're doing. You're damaging yourself, and you're putting yourself in situations that you can't get out of. So when you do things like, when people make poor decisions, like poor behavioral decisions, especially when their mental health is bad, like people drink a lot, or they take drugs, or they start sleeping around, like all these different kind of things that people start doing when they're risk factors to your health and your livelihood and your well-being, those are flags to be like, yo, I might need to step back and reevaluate where I am in my space. And that's basically what happened to me. I was like, yo, I'm crossing boundaries I said I would never cross. I'm saying things I would never. I'm hanging with people I never would. Like all those things that when you get to that scary place where you cross the boundary and you're like, oh shoot, I did that. Like, and you get freaked out by it. Like, I don't know if y'all ever made them kind of decisions. Like you made a scary decision and it scared the heck out of you. Those kind of decisions, that's the kind of stuff where you got to step back and be like, okay, not gonna do that no more. Not gonna do that again. And I learned that, number one, I learned that I could be a certain way. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna put that past anybody. This could happen to anyone, right? So when we were talking about that earlier, you can't judge people for those particular decisions because anybody can be in that predicament. You never know what you're gonna do at that deep despair or self-neglect or deep loneliness or, in a dark place. You never know what you're going to do. So never judge anybody else for a decision that they made in a bad place, because you could end up in that place, right? The goal is, though, once you get into that place and you made that decision, if you get out of it without consequence, hopefully it is without consequence, but once you're out of that situation, you got to know how to stay free. So that's basically the point of it. So I'm encouraged that you asked that question, but we're going to talk more about that because those decisions, like later on, man, they're a trip. Like that's a scary place to be too. This is like, I'm trying to wave. What's going on? What's going on, Miss OBC? I'm excited to see you here. We're just talking about boundaries. I gotta save this live because we got some really good things in here. If anybody else has any other questions, I'm trying to think about how many minutes. Like, oh, I can't. Been hanging out for almost about an hour now. I don't think it's gonna count me down because I think they extended it. But I'm excited. Like we talked a lot about boundaries, but make decisions for yourself. Set up your own boundaries for your own heart and for your mind because it's important for your self care. You never know where you're gonna end up, and stick to them. Like we talked about, like different boundaries, even in dating and stuff like that. You gotta stick to them boundaries because if you don't, people will ride all over your boundaries if you don't keep it. If you don't keep your own boundary, ain't nobody gonna keep that boundary for you. Please, they just not. Family boundaries too. Like I've had people cross boundaries where I said, please don't say that to me anymore, and they continue to say stuff, or they continue to think that they have an opinion about your life. Just don't talk to them no more. Don't pick up the phone. Stuff like that. You know, just keep your boundaries. Keep your peace. It's important. So I'm excited that you all were here. Does anybody else have any other questions? Because I'll hang out with y'all because it feels like Friday. It's not. What is it? Friday Eve? Because I'm excited. But yeah. So we've been on here for an hour. So I'm going to end it here because we just been chilling. But yeah, family is a trip. They be doing the most. I feel like family love to push the buttons too. Like in-laws, I've had in-laws push buttons. Right. It's like in-laws love pushing buttons, like saying all kinds of stuff that they have no idea about, like because they don't live your life. But you just gotta let it roll off and be like, okay, bye. It is what it is. I'm not interested. Protect your peace at all costs. That live that I put up a few weeks ago, like protect your peace at all costs. Know your boundaries. Know where you're supposed to be. Thank y'all for joining me. I'm gonna definitely save this one, and put up some pieces of it because we've been on here for a minute. But I'm really excited that you guys joined me and that y'all had questions. We should do this again sometime. I guess Thursday we might be able to do that, like pop back on and do questions. That might be fun. Yes, until I see y'all next week. And y'all will get like something special because y'all all join me on this live. So I want to send out gifts. So if I DM you for your address, don't be shading me. All right. Love you guys. I'll talk to y'all later. Stay free.